Welcome to another episode of What Am I Doing With My Life with me, your host, Alyssa Desai. Do you ever sit there just thinking, what am I doing with my life? Well, this is the podcast for you. Each episode normalizes not having it all figured out and gives you actionable tips when you feel stuck, lost, and overwhelmed by life. I'm joined by some amazing guests, and I'll also be sharing some solo episodes to help you with wherever you are in your journey. Today, I'm joined by the incredible Daisy. Let's dive straight into her journey.
Hi Daisy, how are you?
I'm so good. Also, I feel like I just need to acknowledge that I always remember people who've been there from the beginning, and I know we're going to talk about journey, but you're always one of those people. Whenever I see your name pop up, I'm like, Alyssa.
Oh. Do you know what? I actually watched back a video of a session we did, which I think was in 2020 or maybe 2021.
Even those words make me shudder.
I know. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I know.
I mean, we're going to go into it, your journey, but
yeah.
Honestly, I've just been watching from the sidelines, like cheering you on, and you're honestly amazing. And I'm so grateful that you're here and going to share this with everyone. So I guess to start us off, can you introduce yourself?
Yes.
And just tell us how you got to where you are, your journey.
Absolutely. So my name is Daisy Morris, and I run a business and community called The Selfhood. And my aim is really to grow purposeful and meaningful communities through creativity, and that could be anything from creative events, creative content, creative ideas, creative conversations like this. I just want to see people who have amazing ideas be the connecting thread that unites people through their ideas. And I have the pleasure of working with some amazing brands and businesses, and even people like you, like independent brands. And yeah, I just like working with people who have cool stuff to talk about and just want to create a sense of belonging for other people. So I have I say it's an agency. It wasn't meant to be an agency, but it's kind of grown into an agency now, where we work with clients on an ongoing basis. And then I also do public speaking events, workshops, training for teams, host my own community events. And then I also work as a content creator as well. So I work with brands like Adobe to create content for their channels. So it's I was just in a meeting before I came here, and they were like, so what do you do? And I tried to explain it, and they were like, oh, you've got your fingers in loads of pies then. It's like, yeah, I suppose I do. But I think I know we're going to talk about journey today, but my experience has been so zigzag, and I guess lecture at lots of unis, and I think people are so afraid to pigeonhole themselves, and I'm always like, I'm a walking case study of how random my career's been. But I'm also really grateful for that, because I feel like I've learned so many random bits of wisdom along the way. But yeah, I always say to people, it's really important to experiment, be creative, not be so confined to the boxes that we put ourselves in. So my business is called The Selfhood, which translates to the quality that constitutes one's individuality and the state of having a unique identity. And I'm just like, life doesn't have to be so rule focused. Like, you make the rules, it's your playground. If you want to try new things with your content, your brand, your business, your career, you're the only person that can govern that and change that. So yeah, that's my bag in a nutshell. I hope I've described that.
Definitely. And I always think about you when I'm in a bit of a creative lull or just wanting to experiment more in life, because I think so often we can look at social media and think it's this big pressured thing, and I just think, let me have fun with it and experiment and put out what I want to put out. And sometimes I think, this is my opinion anyway, we can get so bogged down with like having to have a strategy, and it loses all the fun.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I always think about you when I'm thinking about being creative.
Thank you. That means so much. Thank you. But it's so interesting that you say that, because I've got friends and clients even who have, and we all go through creative slumps, and it's so normal. And I think creative slumps can be a catalyst for self-doubt, because when we don't feel creative, we don't feel connected to our craft, and then we start to question, why am I doing this? I'm not good enough. But I noticed with people in my community and my clients and my friends, when they start to be more creative, you really feel it from their content, and everything comes to life, like everything aligns, everything feels more in flow. And I just think when you stop, the pressure always comes from us, right? It's always you, the content creator, you, the person trying to grow their personal brand, and there's this pressure to like, oh, I need to create, I need to do this, I need to grow my following. It's like, when you just remove that pressure and have fun with it, and it is meant to be fun, it all just starts to flow again. So yeah, I love what you said there about just being more creative and leaning into it a bit more, and not being so rigid with your practice is really important.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you get to this point? Like, start from wherever you want to start with your journey.
Oh gosh, so go really early back. I always liked creative stuff at school, and I remember at high school that I'd always be in the art room, in the art class at lunchtime. I'd always be drawing, always be painting, and it was weird. I went to a careers day when I was 16, and I remember them saying, like, what do you want to be? Which is such a big question for a 16-year-old, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, when I meet a 16-year-old who knows what they want to do, I'm honestly like, how?
I'm terrified.
Like, can you tell me how you're figuring out life
intimidated.
right now?
I'm intimidated. I'm like, what books have you been reading? This is crazy. And it's, I remember the person saying, what do you want to be? And I was like, I don't know, but I want my work to be shown at London Fashion Week one day. And so I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer. And then I went to college, did fashion design, did fashion studies, went to uni, did fashion studies again, but specialised in digital. Basically, I'm terrible at sewing and terrible at like the practical stuff. My brain just can't compute. It's like IKEA instructions. I look at them and I'm like, you might as well be speaking like French to me. Like, I don't get it. So I think like digital, I fell in love with digital at uni. I loved studying at uni so much. I think that really cemented my love for just digital and the digital world. And it's weird, like, I look back at my uni project, it was called the Selfhood Project, and I interviewed loads of different creatives. I came down to London and interviewed this man who created the first micro hotel in London, and he was like this really extravagant, flamboyant man, and I've always just been really interested in unique stories and unique people, unique storytelling. It's weird, like when I look back at my uni projects, I'm like, oh, it's been so ingrained since then. And then I worked in creative agency as soon as I left, which was like the biggest culture shock in the world, because I had to be really organised, and you're delivering to clients, like big, powerful people, and you go from studying. And I think I was really anxious at that point as well. I had really bad social anxiety. I found authority figures really overwhelming. So whenever I teach at unis now, or I work with like emerging talent or people earlier on in their career, I feel like I can really empathise with that, because it's really weird. I think when you've experienced something yourself, you can really feel it in other people. And I can tell like a mile off when someone's feeling anxious. So a lot of the things that I teach and a lot of my messaging is about being calm before you create, and like prioritising your nervous system before you dive into a new venture or do something, because I've operated from a space of fear, and now I know how to regulate that, and my anxiety's under control. I feel really passionately about just sharing some of the wisdoms around how to look after your health and your well-being before you take to screens and try and create something, because I was an anxious wreck in my early 20s. And then I went to Skinny Dip, which was a fashion house, worked in the digital team, worked in experiential events for a bit. And that job required me to be out and about quite a lot and networking, and I was still struggling with social anxiety. And I think I just got to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, and I don't really feel like in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah, and I got to a point where I was just like, I think I can freelance now. And I always wanted to travel, so I did the whole DigiNomad thing, was freelancing, like living my best life in the Philippines from my laptop. And I was like, oh, I've made, like, this is my dream come true. I've always wanted to do this. And then I got back to the UK, had set up loads of new business meetings, and we went into lockdown. And I'll never forget, you know, there's like Ristorante pizzas, the like pound ones. I remember eating one of those and crying at the same time, like, what am I going to do? Because all my work had gone.
Yeah.
And I'd only been freelance about 6 months, and I didn't have any savings. I'd spent all my money traveling. So I was so worried. But at that point, I wasn't using LinkedIn, I wasn't using Instagram, like wasn't using TikTok.
So I was going to ask a really stupid question.
No, go on.
What year was it?
That was, 2020.
2020.
Yeah, 2020. So nearly 4 years ago now.
But that is just incredible. I mean, I know we're going to go on from how you've established things, but like to where you are today, that's only been 4 years. That's like incredible, Daisy.
Thank you so much. That's just giving me goosebumps, because I sometimes forget that. It feels like forever for me though.
Yeah.
I think when you eat, sleep and breathe it, by the way, it's so affirming to hear that. Thank you, because I work alone a lot, so praise is always very welcomed. But yeah, I think because it's just, I don't know, I try and be really present with achievements and like sit in them. But I think it's just like go, go, go. Sometimes you forget to reflect, which I think everyone needs to get better at.
Definitely.
We all need to get better at I also think small wins. I think small wins are actually bigger wins than the big wins, because it's the small wins that get you to the big wins, isn't it? It's like, I was speaking to a friend who's been really struggling with productivity recently. And I was like, just set yourself a really small task of waking up a bit earlier, planning your day so you're not flustered in the morning. And they've been doing that consistently now for the last couple of weeks. And I was like, that is such a big win.
Yeah.
Because look how much it's changed your mindset. Look how much you're getting done. Like that's what's really, and I know you're so big on mindset and you talk about it a lot, but I'm just like, yeah, I think we glamorize big wins, but actually it's the behind the scenes stuff that's so impressive.
100%.
Because it's that consistency, isn't it? Consistently building good habits that enable you to do the big things. I think, yeah, we need to acknowledge the little ones more.
Yeah, 100%. And I think if I'm ever like falling down that hole of a bit like, oh, well, I've not done this and I really want to do this and I haven't achieved this yet, I will stop myself and I'll just think about my life now and about all the things that I'm doing now, all the things that I've achieved, that at one point I was like, no way.
Oh my gosh,
like,
I know.
I'll stop myself and I'll be like, I'm living in a house and I'm married and I've got a dog.
Yes.
The dog, like, I've always wanted a dog for like all my life, you know, like I work for myself.
Yes.
I've been working with amazing clients, like all these things, like, sometimes when you just pause yourself and you think all of those things at one point, I never thought I was going to go
on
and
They were pipe
achieve.
dreams.
Exactly.
And now you're living them.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
So I like to like pause myself sometimes if I'm going down that spiral and think, and even with social media, like I think it can be very easy to sometimes get into a thing of like, oh, well, I'm not growing, or like, you know, well, I've not reached this amount of followers. And then I'm like, to like, look where I started.
Oh my gosh, I know. And that's the thing. I think I wrote a book last year called Community is Your Currency.
Which is incredible.
Thank you so
Honestly,
much.
I do not stop telling every single book. I'm telling everyone, I'm like, you got to read this really good book. Like, honestly, I'm always talking about it. It's amazing.
That honestly means so much. I was so scared when I was writing it. It was the most exposing, terrifying thing I've ever done. But I talk a lot about comparisonitis in the book. And it's that feeling where you feel like you're about to fall into a vortex, your heart starts beating really fast, your hands go all clammy, you're opening social media apps and just comparing, and you lose complete sight over who you are and everything you've achieved. And I think you're so right. It's so nice to acknowledge the little things that you literally used to dream of. Like, I remember being 16 and thinking, oh my gosh, one day I want to live in London. And I thought it was the fucking coolest thing ever. And then I moved to London and I was like, I've done it. And it's like, I literally remember being sat in my bedroom when I was 16. Do you know Vice magazine?
Yeah.
They used to have this like online platform and they used to upload pictures from gigs. It was when like blogging was really cool. And I used to look at all the Vice blogs and all the pictures like, oh, like I'd love to go to a party like that one day. Like I remember it so clearly. And then it happens and you're like, oh my gosh, I did something that like younger me was so obsessed with. It's the coolest thing in the world.
I know. And I bet you've done things that younger you didn't even dream about.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like I wondered, did you ever think you were going to write a book?
Never ever. Purely because, like, full transparency, I don't think, in fact, no, I'm going to take that back. I now think I'm a good writer because I was able to do something that I was really afraid of, and I've had the most incredible feedback from people. It still makes me feel weird when people are like, I love the way you write, because I used to feel really self-conscious of it. And my grammar's not great. There's always typos in my social posts. Like, people will DM me like, hey, just so that you know you spelt this wrong, and I'm like, oh, get a grip, it's free content, whatever. But I didn't used to think I was a good writer at all, so it never even crossed my mind. And I have friends that have written books, and I remember thinking that's so cool, but couldn't be me, like absolutely not. And a publisher reached out to me, so have you thought of writing a book? And I genuinely thought it was spam, because you know you get all those scam emails now, like they're rife, they're everywhere. And I sat across my friend at the time and I was like, oh my God, these bots are like, they're so advanced. And she was like, I think that could be legit. And I Googled it and I researched women. I was like, no way. Because I do spell things wrong a lot. I've never been diagnosed with dyslexia, but I write, like, my mind moves quicker than the words. So I just never thought that it's something I could do. And it was the most exposing, vulnerable thing I've ever done in my career, and I lost so much sleep and I was so anxious. Like I said, I used to have anxiety. I don't really experience anxiety anymore, but last year honestly, it was awful, because I just thought, I'm going to get absolutely annihilated on the internet, and I just thought, I don't think I'm thick-skinned enough for that. And thankfully it's been received so well and it's brought so many opportunities. And I think the lesson in that for me, and that I always try and teach, is to embrace fear. And I don't think we can grow unless we're outside of our comfort zone. And I think I've now learned it's really important to, just do little things that feel uncomfortable, because how amazing does it feel afterwards? Like, you know this, like, you're an expert in this. 100%. It's the feeling afterwards where you're like, I've just done something I never thought I'd be able to do.
I know. I think it honestly, for me, feels like I have like a new lease of life, or like all of a sudden where I am, it expands, my life expands. And I'm like, hold on a sec. At one point, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. Now I've done it. So what else am I thinking about?
Yeah.
Which I don't think I can do, which I can go on and do.
Yeah.
Like, it almost like blows my mind a little bit. Like, I'm like, it's so exciting. And I think before, I started coaching, I just hated feeling fear. Like, anything that I felt scared to do, I just would avoid doing. And now, similarly to you, like, I really, really embrace it. And I'm like, it is good for me to feel fear. Like, totally. It's a sign I'm pushing myself out my comfort zone. I'm going to feel amazing afterwards. Yes, okay, in the moment, it might not feel great. But I feel like you just, and I hope you feel really proud of yourself for the book, but I know when I do things that I feel scared of, like, I feel really proud of myself for actually pushing myself.
Yeah, it's a really, really lovely feeling, and I try and do it as much as I can now. Like, I went to a meeting this morning and I was so scared before, because it was quite a big meeting, and I was fully prepared, but I still had that voice of like, and it wasn't directly saying this, but I think the undercurrent is like, you're not qualified for this, you're not good enough for this. And I think you have to get really good when you go through those moments of fear, of being your own cheerleader in your head. And I talk about it in the book as well, but something someone told me early on in my career is give that negative self-talk a name. So mine's Tina, negative self-talk Tina. And this morning I was on the tube, I was like, shut up, Tina, like, go away. Because I'm like, that's actually not my voice to own, that's my thoughts. So I think, you're so right. And as you were talking about it, like, expanding your world, I had like goosebumps, because I love that so much. And I think it's true, like, every time you do something I was so proud of myself after the meeting. I was like walking down the street, like, dancing to my AirPods, like, I did it. And I did a good job. And it went really, really, really well. And I think someone taught me this recently. My housemate's a psychologist, and she was like, we're programmed to think the worst thoughts possible because we're designed to survive. Yeah. So our brain will literally, it's like neuroscience, it will prompt us to think of the worst case scenario, so we're prepared for it if it happens. So I think, like, we have to almost unlearn thinking the worst thing's going to happen and think, well, what's the best that could happen instead? And I know that sounds really like cliche, but I also think there's something really beautiful about reframing fear. And exactly as you said, just think about how expansive you'll feel afterwards.
Yeah. Honestly, I think for anyone, I would so encourage them to, like, write down things that scare them, start pushing themselves out their comfort zone. It's such a great way to build confidence.
Honestly, it's like, I did a TEDx last year, and public speaking used to be my absolute biggest fear. And it is for so many people. Like, 75% of people say that speaking in public is their biggest fear. And that's not just like standing up in front of a room. That could be in a social situation. I don't think it's talked about enough, but I talk about this concept of microdosing your confidence. So microdosing is typically used when dishing out psychedelics, basically. You do like a tiny bit of mushrooms to feel the positive effects on your brain without getting high, and it's used a lot in chemical trials and stuff. But I love that concept, but doing it with confidence. So instead of jumping in the deep end and doing the thing that really scares you, just microdose your way up to it. So if it's, you know, I want to start a podcast like you've done, which is amazing, by the way, you could start by doing like Vox Pop series on the street to get yourself familiar with it, or you could start a virtual podcast to start with. Or actually, like, how did you get into it? What would you say your microdosing approach was to build you up to this? Because I feel like doing a podcast is a really bold move. Like, it's amazing, but it's not like for the faint-hearted, is it?
Yeah.
It's a big thing to do.
I would definitely say that when I did season 1 last year, I felt really nervous, and I recorded it all on Zoom. I felt really nervous at the first one.
Yeah.
And I think my learning was like, the first one's going to feel quite uncomfortable, and that's okay, and it will get easier as I go on. And it was funny because even when I came to start doing them live, I was like, oh my God, now I feel really, really nervous again.
Yeah.
And I was a bit like, you know, you have that moment of like, why am I feeling nervous? And you're like, oh yeah, it's just because it's a new thing.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's about knowing that it's okay to feel those nerves, and it's okay to feel the fear, and it's not a sign that I shouldn't be doing something. It's just a sign that like over time it's going to feel more comfortable. And I'm so with you on the public speaking thing. Like, it's something I love to do, but I was so scared. And I remember being at uni and having to do like presentations, and the fear,
honestly,
the fear I used to feel. Like, I look back now and I'm like, I feel like a different person. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I'd done some public speaking before, like since I'd sort of started coaching, and I'd really enjoyed it. And then last year I was asked to go and speak to 80 people in person in a company, and they were like, it's in an auditorium. And I was like, oh my God. And it was so crazy because, bless my mum, like, it wasn't in London. So I was like, Mum, I've got to travel. And she was like, I'll come with you. So my mum came with me.
So lovely.
And she was like supporting me. And it was really crazy because like my head was saying, you're fine. Like, I feel like I've really got my head into a good place where I definitely do sometimes have that negative self-talk, but the positive self-talk is a lot stronger. So my positive self-talk was like, you're fine, you've got this, you know you can do it. But my body was feeling quite a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And I just kept having this thought of like, I've never done it before. So what if I get up?
Yeah.
And I like panic, I freeze, and I run out of that auditorium.
I know.
And then they never see me again.
I think that's everyone's fear when they first start speaking. And I think it's really important from like, this is a bit of like a wacky thing to say, but a girl I know called Emma Marshall started this thing called Movement is Medicine, and it's all about how to move emotion through your body through the form of dance. And I'll never forget her saying to me, when you see, like on David Attenborough, like a bird get attacked, the first thing it does is like shake it off.
Yes.
And we just sit in discomfort and we sit in fear and anxiety. So I always say to people now, like, if you're going to do something that really scares you, try and move before, or like shake it off, or like try and just move your body, because quite often, like you've just said, your brain is fine, but your body's feeding it, and they're so interlinked.
Exactly.
And quite often as well, like I have to check myself. I remember my therapist once saying to me, like, don't confuse excitement with nerves, because you always say to me you're nervous, but it could just be that you're excited. And I was like, that's so true, because excitement and nerves exhibit the same like body symptoms.
Exactly.
She's like, you might just be excited. And now I'm like, oh, look at me, I'm so cute, I'm so excited.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head with like moving your body. And that moment I was like, I can't just rely on my head. My head's actually doing, like, I need to really get my body into a calm state. And breathing is so incredibly powerful. Like, if you're going into scary situations and you're not using your breath, you are completely missing a trick.
Honestly.
And like activating your parasympathetic nervous system, bringing your body to a place of calm.
Yeah.
It was wild. Like, I was practicing breathing techniques and like before to calm my body. And then before I went on and spoke, I had to like sit and listen to a couple of other people, and I was just doing breathing techniques. And I was I'd got to the place where I was like, okay, I might go up and still feel like my heart is beating fast, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I went up and I actually felt calm. Yeah. And I was like, my body actually feels okay.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, the power of your breath is so incredible. Like,
so
we are just incredible beings.
I know.
Like, we're so powerful. We've got so much like within us that we can use. I know we can like look external for tools and stuff like that, but we have so much within ourselves that we can utilize to like bring ourselves to a place of calm.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is.
It's incredible. Like, yeah, I'm like nodding along so much because I only recently learned about breathwork like a year ago, and I went on a retreat in January. It all sounds very like Hareem Pants Live Laugh Love. When I got home, my friends were like, "Shut up, Hareem," because I was just like, "Oh, on my spiritual retreat." But it was amazing. Like, we were doing breathwork the whole time and learning about our nervous system and how our bodies only want to help us. And I think we're so conditioned to believe that our bodies are against us, and like I could go down a whole rabbit hole now about Western medicine. But to your point, like, the power is always inside of us, mentally, physically, and I think breath work, like you've just said, if you feel nervous, is so key. And it's like pretty wild to me that people don't know. Like, I didn't know that till a little while ago. Yeah. But do you have a breath work technique that you would recommend, like before public speaking or doing something nerve-wracking, that you use that is your favourite one, or is it more?
Two I have. So one is elongating the out breath. So you just breathe in for 4, out for 4, then in for 4, out for 5, in for 4, out for 6, in for 4, out for 7, and then in for 4, out for 8.
Okay.
Or the other one I like doing is you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 4, and you kind of like hold it in your chest and like push into your chest a bit.
Yeah.
And then you breathe out for 4.
Okay, these are really good.
And I just love doing them. And like, another thing that I love to remind myself, like if I'm feeling that fear, is just reminding myself, like, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Like, I might just repeat to myself a lot, I'm safe, I'm safe. And actually, this is going to sound really silly, but I'm like a little bit scared of the dark. I don't know what it is, but if I'm like walking out, I've always been a bit scared of the dark, but if I'm like out in the evening and it's really dark and I feel a bit scared, like I'll often just be like, okay, this is a great chance for me to like bring, like, help my body to come to a place of calm.
Yeah.
So I'll just like breathe and remind myself that I'm safe, because I'm like, this is good practice for me.
Yeah.
But just reminding yourself you're safe is really important. I think to your point around our bodies are just trying to help us. Like, that's what I love to remind myself. My body's not going into this place of panic, and it's not that my heart is beating fast and whatever else so that I get annoyed at myself or so that I can't do it. It's just a way to like gear me up to potentially fight off something that's scary or run, because I'm feeling just scared.
Trying to protect you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so instead of seeing everything as like you're working against your body, just actually being really appreciative of it.
That is such a beautiful way to frame it.
Like,
I love that.
Thank you for protecting me and doing a really good job.
I love
but
that
I'm okay.
so much. That's such a lovely way to think about it. Like, it's just your instincts, isn't it? Trying to protect you at the end of the day. It's just your body saying, okay, we're a bit anxious at the minute. Here's how I'm going to help you. And I think we see it as like, fuck's sake, I'm sweating. And it's like, no, your body's trying to cool you down because you're hot. And it's like, oh, if you can see it, I've never thought of it like that. And that's a really beautiful way to reframe it. It's like, no, your body's just trying to like keep you alive through the stressful moment.
I know. I feel like we're so hard on like
it's really cute,
ourselves
actually.
and our body and our mind sometimes. And I'm like, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, we really are.
And like, it might just have learnt that that's a scary thing and it's okay.
Yeah, I love that.
On the anxiety point then, because you've obviously mentioned that in terms of your journey, how did you support yourself going into the roles that you went into when you were feeling that social anxiety?
Do you know what? I was so embarrassed of it, and I didn't tell people for ages. Like, I remember the first time I spoke about it, feeling quite anxious, that my friends would be like, bullshit, no you weren't, because I think I masked it really, really well. And it was more apparent in work, because it was the imposter thing that made me feel anxious and feeling unworthy, like I wasn't good enough. even though I had loads of experience, I was like, did that even happen? Like, did I really play a role in that? I think it's really funny. As soon as I started talking about it, so many people were like, oh my gosh, I feel exactly the same. Or thank you for sharing it. And I think now we talk about mental health, especially in the workplace and in our careers, a lot more, as we should do. But I think when I was first starting in my career, this was like 7-8 years ago, it wasn't really spoken about. So the idea of saying to my manager, I get really anxious before I present, I just couldn't do that. It made me feel even more anxious because it felt like I couldn't do my job. And I remember it was mainly public speaking. So if I had to stand up in a meeting and share my ideas or pitch, my neck would go red. I'd fumble my words. And I remember calling in sick a few times because I just can't do it. I cannot do it. And then I realised when I started freelancing, it's actually a big part of my job. I've got to go in, talk to strangers about what I do and share ideas. But I think by that point, I'd really, not when I was first freelancing. And in fact, do you know what, like full transparency, I did my TED talk last year on how to microdose confidence and speak with confidence. A couple of weeks before I did that, I had a full-blown panic attack in front of clients in a meeting while I was pitching. And I felt it hadn't happened for ages. Yeah. And I was like, I can't do the talk. Like, what if it happens again? Also really like felt like a fraud. I was like, how can I talk about having a panic attack? But then I actually acknowledged it in the talk. And I was like, I'm about to talk about something I've struggled with my whole life. I thought I'd overcome it. 2 weeks ago, it happened again. And again, that reframing mindset. I thought to myself, actually, this doesn't make me a fraud. I feel so passionately about trying to help people overcome what I've experienced, because it's a horrible feeling when you start to panic and your brain and like you feel like your heart's pounding and it's like the walls are closing in. And I experiencing it before I did my talk, I was like, no, I'm using this as fuel because I don't want other people to experience this. So to answer your question in a really long-winded way, I think initially I masked it. I tried to cover it up. I would try and get out of scenarios that I knew would exacerbate my anxiety. And then I think owning it actually became a superpower. And like I said, like on my way to my meeting this morning, I was still so anxious. But then I was like, it's because it's scary and it's new, but how exciting. And I also think if you're being asked to do things that scare you, you wouldn't be asked if you weren't right for the opportunity. And also something I've really, really learned to adopt is this mindset of just like, it's just an experience at the end of the day. Like, don't put so much pressure on it. Like, even with stuff like dating, like, don't see it as, oh my God, I'm going on a date, this might be my life partner. Just be like, I'm going to meet someone new. I'm going to just chat to someone and have a nice experience. Like, it doesn't have to be so pressurized. So I think taking the pressure off, but also the microdosing thing that I spoke about was huge for me. So drip feeding scary experiences into my life and into my world. And yeah, not going full pelt. Also, I was quite lucky that it was lockdown, so a lot of my meetings and stuff were on Zoom.
Yeah.
And a lot of like the podcasts I was doing. So I'd already had offline experience. So I would say, try having more like virtual Zoom meetings or do virtual podcasts to just get you used to it and know what to expect.
That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like from your journey that you've always kind of known what you wanted to do, but have you ever had moments when you've just thought, what am I doing?
I didn't know what I wanted to do till last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I fell into everything I've done. I think like I'd never known from a job perspective, I'm still like, the world's my oyster. I'd never thought I'd end up doing this. It just happened kind of by accident. And last year, again, full transparency, when my book came out, I had a real like identity crisis, and I wouldn't say I felt depressed, but I was really unhappy, and I just felt this huge thing had happened. And then I was like, what next? And it felt a bit, not anticlimactic, because I had the best launch event and my friends were amazing and the community really supported it. But I think that's quite a common thing when you do something that's had so much anticipation and it's gone, and you're kind of like, oh, who am I now? Like, how do I navigate the world? Like, all of my time is freer, and what was like an all-consuming universe is now like out there. And I had to really connect with and do some soul searching around what's my why. And that's really cliche advice and everybody says it. And I know like it's a bit of an eye roll, but it honestly for me it's the recipe for reigniting the flame and the thing that you want to do. And I remember hearing something a little while ago, and I think about it all the time, and it's one of the most special, incredible things I've ever heard someone say. It was on a documentary about purpose, and they were like, if you struggle to know what you want to do, it's usually the thing that caused you pain when you were a child, or the thing that maybe caused you hardship in early life. And I think having social anxiety and feeling disconnected from people and not really knowing how to show up in social spaces massively affected my confidence. It really impacted my life. And now my life's work is to help people create communities and be in community and bring people together. And I think if you can see it as that, like, don't see your hardships as things that negatively impact you. Like, how can you turn that pain into something special? And it's funny, like, I've got a lot of mates who have really amazing businesses and platforms and charities, and I look at what they've done versus what they went through when they were younger, and there's like this connecting thread. And I only learned that recently, and it, like, honestly, like, you know, when you have a realization, I just burst into tears. I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. That's so special, and it's like such a beautiful thing. But I think life is such an evolution, and I teach a lot at unis, and a lot of young people I speak to, I always feel so old when I say that. A lot of the youngsters. Oh my God.
Yeah, I did like a thing at a uni the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, why am I so old?
I know. And I was like, the young people. I'm like, wait, I am still young. But yeah, I always try and remind people that, like, that is the beauty of life. Like, self-discovery is an ongoing thing. If you wake up tomorrow and you think, actually, do you know what? I want to be a tree surgeon. Good for you. Do it. I think always chase the excitement, chase the thing that you feel really passionately about, and it will always work out.
Yeah. And I love how that connects back to what you were saying about the social anxiety, because I definitely think, you know, the fact that you had that panic attack, but then you were able to use it in your TED talk, I have no doubt that, you know, and I will definitely say this from when I read your book, when I read your book and, like, look to see anything that you ever share, like, it feels so authentic, and it really comes from, like, lived experience rather than you just being like, okay, everyone needs to microdose confidence because that will help you with anxiety. It's like, no, this is actually what I'm experiencing and what has helped me. Yeah. So I love that thread that's come through.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's still there. It's like, I find it quite overwhelming when people are like, oh my gosh, you're doing so much. And I'm like, I still am terrified. Yeah. And, like, I think, like, we're all just human. And something I've learned, like, I've worked with some amazing people and people who have had incredible careers and way more experience than I have. Everyone's winging it. Yeah. And they just get better at it. And that's brought me real comfort. Is I've had people on these huge pedestals who I still think are amazing, but I get to know them and I get to know the humanness of them. And I'm like, you're great, but also, like, you still struggle with things. We all do. And I think social media especially, like, we put people on these pedestals and we see all these amazing things that we're doing, and then you break it down and you're like, oh, you've had to make huge sacrifices for that, or you've been through some real shit to get there, or you still get insecure about XYZ. We're all just human beings at the end of the day. But social media gives us this really glossy lens that just is all sparkly, but it's not the reality. If you take the lens off, it's like there's an actual human there that still, you know, just is a normal person beneath the surface. So I think it's also important to recognise that even though people might be doing all these amazing things, it doesn't take away that credibility, but there is a human behind all of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, I'm really trying to lean more into, like, my vulnerable side and share these things, because I think it does help other people to feel less alone. And also there's something so, I don't know, like, freeing about sharing these vulnerable things which may be happening now or maybe have happened in my past, where you're kind of, it doesn't feel like, almost what you were saying about your social anxiety, right? Instead of being embarrassed about it, being like, it's a part of me and I feel it, and like, it's completely okay for me to experience this.
So true.
And I put something the other day on my social media, and I've been thinking about it since last year, is about, do I want to have kids or not? And
I saw that. I loved it so much because I so resonated.
Yeah. And I like when I first started to feel that last year, I felt like I was going through identity crisis. I was like, oh my God, like, who am I? What is my life? Like, what is happening? And I'm definitely the type of person where I will allow myself to process it like personally before I share it. But I think partly at the beginning of this year why I was feeling a bit of a creative block was because this was so present for me, but I wasn't sharing it. So I didn't feel like I was fully being authentic. And I just thought, let me just put something out. And honestly, just being able to have amazing conversations with other women who were like, I feel the exact same, was so amazing for me. And yeah, it just it felt really good for me. And also I really hope that anyone else who read that was like, okay, other people feel this too.
Totally. One of my favourite quotes that I live by is vulnerability fosters closeness. Yeah. And when you're just like, do you know what, this is me, this is who I am, you give other people permission to be the same.
Exactly.
And I think like, especially in the UK, I think we're quite like reserved people, and we feel like, I can't say that, or I don't want to do that, or that's not professional. But actually it's a breath of fresh air. I love it so much when I work with somebody in a professional sense, or even if I meet someone at a party and within minutes they're like, oh yeah, they're just telling me something that it's not even, people are like, oh, sorry to overshare. I'm like, it's not, you're just sharing. But like, even the language that we use, we demonize closeness, like, oh, it's an overshare. It's like, no, you're just sharing, and that's okay. Like, if that's what you feel you need to do right now, that's fine. But I think also from a community perspective, it's about finding people who allow you to be comfortable in sharing those things. And you've built such an amazing community, and I was saying to you on the way up in the lift, like, I always see your content at the moment because you feel really aligned and true in everything that you're saying, and it feels so real. And like you sharing that post about wanting kids, I was like, oh, I'm so glad someone's talking about it, because I'm feeling exactly the same. I'm like, oh, maybe that isn't my path. And I think there is this new wave of women who are seeing that the world doesn't revolve around being a mum, and that we can create our own identities through our work, but there's no blueprint before us. Yeah. So we're like the test run in that sense. And obviously there are women in the generation above us who have chosen careers and not chosen careers, just didn't want kids. But I think I'm seeing it more now than ever, and it's scary because it's like this new wave of women who just love their jobs, and maybe they don't love their jobs but they want to travel, or like they don't want partnership because they feel like, I'm actually really content in myself. And it's exciting, but it's scary when there's not been a really cemented model of that before you, because it can feel like you're doing it for the first time. But I loved that you took the plunge to share that, because it just felt really refreshing but also really affirming.
Do you know what, it felt for me like a weight had been lifted. As soon as I shared it, I was like, oh, okay, I'm like, I can talk. Like, I definitely sometimes feel if I'm feeling something but I'm not sharing it, I don't feel like I'm fully being authentic. And I chatted with my husband before. I was like, do you mind like if I share this? Because like your family might say, not that I'm at all embarrassed about it, but I was just like conscious that, you know, people in our like world might see this. And then, but there's something just incredibly freeing about allowing ourselves to be us. And that's something that you really inspire me with, because I feel that everything you put out, you're just you. And I guess, how do you have that confidence to just be fully you on social media and with what you do?
I mean, it's so funny to me because like, my following is tiny in comparison to other people in my field. Like, I don't think I have a particularly like huge, I've got a really engaged community. I'm really proud of what I've built, and I work with brands who've been on my vision board, and I believe that all of the opportunities that I've had, which I still have to pinch myself, like I said, like my following's not huge, but I think it's from being myself that brands are just like, we really like your style. And it's a bit cringe, but I thought it was really funny. I saw this post on LinkedIn the other day, and it was like, rather be someone's shot of tequila than everyone's cup of tea. And I was like, that's so funny. But it's so true. I think like Adobe, I've used Adobe since I was 15. I love Adobe. I'm now like on a retainer with them to create content for them, and they're like, we just like that you just do you. And like in some of my videos I like do this really cringy wink at the camera, and it's become like my signature thing, and I'll never dilute that. Like I get big corporate brands inquire about content, and I'm like, this is my style, are you happy with it? And if they're like, no, we've got a script, I'm like, I'm not doing it then, because I never want to put out something that doesn't feel right for me. Like that's just who I am. And I think authenticity is such a buzzword, but you know, it's such a big part of my job, it's a big part of my business. The name of my business is literally, you know, to celebrate individuality. So for me to not live by that would just feel really strange for me. But I think finding confidence to be that and do that has all come from my community. Having people like you who support what I do, share my work, take the time to tell someone today, you're doing a really good job. I think that's so important. Like quite often we see people doing great things and we don't tell them, and I'm really lucky that I have people in my community that like, I've read your book and it's been amazing, and I've done this because of your book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the best feeling in the world. And I think that just inspires me even more to keep being myself. But it comes back to everything you just like beautifully summarised, in that by you sharing your vulnerabilities and being yourself, you inspire other people to do the same. And that's all I want to do. I just want people to feel happy and comfortable in themselves and in their work and in spaces. I think that is my life's work. That's where I feel like when I get really emotional about what I do, it's like I just want people to feel like they belong to something, and I never want them to have to feel like they have to dilute themselves in order to feel that way, because I've been that person. I've been, especially in my early 20s, I remember trying to mould into different things, and I was like, this is so exhausting. It's so exhausting. I think it's such a special feeling to come away from something knowing, do you know what, I was fully myself then, and I stood by it, and even if people disagreed with it, I can hold my head high. Because you get this like internal gut ickiness when you've betrayed yourself or not been your full self, and it's something about those interactions just doesn't feel nice. So I think it's also about a long game. When you're yourself, you never compromise who you are, and take experience or take opportunities just because they look good. It's like, I'm doing this because it feels right for me.
Definitely. So much like integrity with who you are and your values, and
I think it's really
what
important.
you want to be.
And
I think that like listening to yourself is so important, because I'll speak to so many clients, and I feel like it's like when your friend gives you advice on like dating or like, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter what anyone else says, because as soon as you do something because someone else has said it, whether it's in your business, in your life, career, dating, whatever it is, you will, and if it doesn't work out how you want, you will always have this feeling of like, why didn't I do what I wanted to do?
So true.
And I'm just like, what do you want to do? Like, I will have clients who come to me and they're like, Alyssa, what should I do? And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do?
What
like,
do you
sorry to be that annoying
do?
person. Let me try and help you figure out what you want to do, because that is where you will be able to move forwards with your head held high, knowing that you stayed true to yourself. No matter how it worked out, no matter what the outcome, we can never predict the future. We have no idea what's going to happen. But at least you can look back and go, I did what I wanted to do. There's nothing worse. And I've been there when you're like, why the hell did I listen to that person? And now I'm in this position. Like, as long as I've stayed true to myself, I can always look back and say, okay, maybe now I look back and think, okay, 2 years ago, I wouldn't do that now. But at the time, it's what I wanted to do. So it's fine. It's part of life.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I think like it's about also breaking down what's expected of us and going against the grain a little bit. Like, I think as a society, we've built this really archaic structure of milestones that we need to achieve by a certain age, and that can feel like a lot of pressure. And when people don't understand that maybe you don't want that, you can feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm a bit weird, or I should be aiming for that. So I think also, exactly as you've said, it's so right, asking yourself, okay. And also a question I really like to ask myself is, if social media didn't exist, what would I be doing? Like, if you couldn't share it on the internet, if no one could see what you were up to, how would you be living, really? Because I think, I see it with some of my friends, I'm like, I don't think you'd be doing this if it wasn't for other people to consume. Not in a horrible way, like, I don't think you'd be going for that job, or I don't think you'd be working so hard. I don't think you'd be in such a hurry to buy the house. I know you'd probably want to travel. Like, just strip away the expectation and just sit with yourself and just think, what do I actually want?
Yeah. It comes back to what we were saying before about, like, we know and are, like, almost like inner wisdom.
Yeah.
And, yeah. We're powerful.
We really are.
Powerful people.
Go on.
Okay, my last question for you then. If someone's listening to this, if they feel just completely lost with life, they don't know what they're doing, and they feel stuck, they feel overwhelmed, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them?
Whew. This is such a great question. I haven't thought about it. 3 bits of advice. It's so cliche, this one, but trust your gut always. If you step into a situation, if you're around a person, and something's telling you the vibes aren't vibes in, something's off, I think your gut has the answer to absolutely everything. I've made the mistake so many times where I haven't trusted my gut, and I've been like, oh, this will be really cool though. And then I'm like, why have I done that?
Yeah.
Why have I done that again?
Yeah.
Like, it always knows, always trust your instincts. I think don't live life on other people's terms. That's something I've really come to learn in my early 30s. I, for so long, felt like I should be married, I should have kids, I should be doing all of these things. I don't have any of those things. And I'm just like, I'm really happy. Like, I'm actually really, really happy. And people can't get their head around it. They're like, are you going to start dating? I'm like, no, I don't want to. Like, people cannot get their head around it. And it took me a really long time to learn that that's my normal. So don't listen to external voices. Chase the things that excite you. If it makes you happy, do it. If it doesn't, don't. And then the final one would be get to know yourself. Spend time alone. Self-discovery is such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Whether that is solo breakfast dates, going to an art gallery on your own. There is so much amazing wisdom that will come to you with alone time. And I think that was terrifying for me for a long time. I was really scared to spend time on my own. But through self-discovery and spending more time by myself, answering lots of hard questions internally, I feel like I really like myself now. It's been a journey, but I'm now at a point where I'm like, love my life, really like myself, love what I'm doing, feel excited about my future, and I truly believe that's come from self-discovery and alone time. So I always say to people, like, solo dates are great for your creativity, but also just getting to know yourself, knowing who you are, what you stand for, what you like, what you don't like. Like, I remember really wanted to like yoga for ages, and going to yoga and being like, I'm really bored, like, why isn't this fun? And then I went on a yoga retreat. I was like, I don't like yoga. And then I was like, but I do like Pilates. So actually, like, that's fine. I'm at peace with that. But like, spend time getting to know these things. I thought yoga was cool, and I thought it made me look like really like, I'm so chilled, I've got my shit together. And I was like, I'm not a chilled person. I chill in different ways. That's okay. So yeah, I think be okay with experimenting with your likes and your dislikes.
That puts when you said, I really like myself, that just put such a smile on my face.
Oh.
Because I don't think people often maybe think about that. And I just, yeah.
I always think, like, would you want to be your own mate?
Yeah.
I'd love to be my friend. I'd love to be my mate. Like, would you want to be your own friend?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think you're such a sound human. Everyone I meet, I'm like, of course I'd want to be your friend. Yeah. Would you want to be your friend? Like, I think be the person that you'd want to be mates with.
That.
Yeah.
Best way to end. Thank you so much, Daisy.
Thank you for having me. You're the best.
Thank you too.
Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode and for supporting the podcast. It honestly means the absolute world to me, and I want to spread the message that it is okay to not have everything figured out. No one really does. So I hope listening to this has helped you to feel less alone. 2 things that really help me spread this message are leaving a review and also sharing this episode with anyone you think that it might help. So if you are able to do that, honestly, I would appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your day. Take care, and I will see you soon.